Hi, I'm Catherine, and welcome to my second SRP Chalk Talk. So, in my last Chalk Talk, I went over my beginning research of Catholics in favor of and against the death penalty in America, and I talked about different people in the Catholic Church who significantly argue that contradiction, for example, Sister Helen Prejean and Father Greg Boyle. To further my research, I was left with two questions. What is the history of the death penalty in America in relation to Catholicism, and in what specific ways has the Church's hierarchy failed in their advocating for Catholics to be pro-life and against capital punishment? Through research, I found that the first question can be answered from both the anti-capital punishment and pro-capital punishment Catholics. So those in favor of the death penalty would most likely answer by literally quoting the Bible, where there are more than a few instances of Catholics sentencing a person to death. Exodus chapter 21 verse 12 states, "He who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death." And Leviticus chapter 20 verse 10 states, "If there is a man who commits adultery with another man's wife, one who commits adultery with his friend's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death." These are just a couple examples among other instances, such as murder, kidnapping, bestiality, adultery, and homosexuality that would justify condemning a person to death before and during the days of the Bible. So clearly, death as a form of punishment was significant even in the earliest days of the Catholic Church. Those anti-capital punishment would argue that the previously mentioned executions by early Catholics were wrong and out of line with the consistent ethic of life which the Catholic Church is based off of. So basically, the belief that God chooses when to put you in this world through conception and when you're ready to come back to Him through natural death. The second question regarding the role of the Church's hierarchy and how they advocate for Catholics to be consistent with the consistent ethic of life was tougher to research. I think this is probably because it's hard to find an open Catholic, let alone a member of the hierarchy, who's also openly pro-capital punishment, as a source that explicitly explains that what they believe in, which in this case is the death penalty, goes against their religion, Catholicism, and who's willing to share that case with others. However, through a lot of research, I came across several answers to this question as well. A group called Catholics for Choice, which I'm going to talk about later, made a very interesting video called The Secret History of Sex, Choice, and Catholics, and in it are all Catholic theologians, professors, distinguished professors, and researchers, and one in particular named Anthony Padovano stated, "People make the mistake of identifying their faith with the current views of the hierarchy and fail to recognize that there are three sources of truth in the Roman Catholic Church: the hierarchical magisterium, the magisterium teaching power of the theologians, and the magisterium of the laity. All three of these are sources of truth." Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, in a famous speech at Fordham University, actually acknowledged his agreement with the state that the state has the right to inflict capital punishment. Pope John Paul II also proclaimed in the Evangelium Vitae that the direct and voluntary killing of an innocent human being is always gravely immoral. But cleverly, or maybe not so cleverly, he distinguished innocent, possibly not agreeing that every criminal has a right to live, nor denying that the state has the right in some cases to execute the guilty. In opposition to that, following the majority of Catholics, Pope Francis has stated, "Today the death penalty is inadmissible no matter how serious the crime committed." So the current Pope said capital punishment contradicts God's plan for man and society and does not render justice to the victims, but rather fosters vengeance. So these are answers to some questions that I've brought up while researching, and at this stage, I've fully recognized that one voice, not even one as hierarchical as the Pope, can represent the views and actions of all Catholics. And for my next Chalk Talk, I hope to use more evidence to advance the argument for both sides of my research, including similar arguments such as abortion and euthanasia, and come closer to a conclusion. Thank you.